What?
It's kept up real well.
Oh, pardon me, I said Richard, he reminds me it's Jack. And more importantly, Jack's widow, Wilma, is here with other family members. Wilma, I'm not sure just where you are exactly, but she's waved here. And last year in the newsletter, we indicated that it would be beneficial if we could find a jacket from one of our early members that originated back in World War II. And it might be hanging in a closet, long unused, and so forth. And it was such a delight when Wilma called or contacted me, I think by email, and said, I have such a jacket. And so we quickly got it, and it's in the case exhibit there now. And so Patsy Jack was quite a famous aircraft. And her son, Keith, is going to talk today about Patsy Jack and the crew. And Keith is a lieutenant colonel retired, graduated from the academy, and has had various positions in the Air Force and awarded quite a few medals and ribbons. And Keith, we're all interested in Patsy Jack.
Thank you, Wynn, for that very nice introduction. I wanted to also introduce my sister, Jack's daughter, of course, Cherie Pope over here. She's providing some handouts to people. And my wife, Betty Bennett, on this side. So if you don't get a handout, wave your hand to them, and they will bring one to you. As Wynn said, I'm the son of a World War II veteran. Jack Bennett served as a radio operator waist gunner in the Patsy Jack. He was one of the original crews that went over in early 1944 and began bombing from Italy up into Europe and over to Romania. It's certainly an honor for me to be able to discuss the B-24H and my father's crew and their efforts in the war. It's certainly, the Patsy Jack is probably a typical example of many bombers that were flown in the European theater. A lot of their experiences, I'm sure, were in common, although they were not common experiences. Some of the experiences none of us will ever encounter, and hopefully none of us ever have to encounter. Patsy Jack flew in combat on its first mission in January 30th, 1944, until August 2nd, 1944, when it was shot down over France. We will look at the first high-level Celeste mission and the final mission. We will also review some background data about the B-24 and the crew to help us understand aerial combat as it was fought about 70 years ago. If you think of all the changes that have happened regarding aircraft and our methods of operating and running aircraft, it's really phenomenal what they accomplished. But first, a question to you, which is a real easy question. How many of you have seen a B-24 in photos or maybe in person? And out in the exhibit area, there's a wonderful model of one. I don't know if you've noticed it. And then the back of the jacket that our family donated has a B-24 on it. So almost everybody, I think, should be able to raise your hand. If not, the handout has pictures of B-24 in it also. It's obvious that the B-24 looks different from a lot of aircraft. It was boxy, had a twin tail, it had a tricycle landing gear, and there were over 19,000 of those manufactured. I guess we lost a lot in training, but there were 19,000 manufactured during World War II, and they were manufactured at the Ford Motor Company at its Willow Run plant in Michigan. Some of the other facts about the B-24, I'm an engineer, so I like lots of facts. Specifications. The H model incorporated a powered nose turret to better defend the planes from frontal attacks. And I know we have the nose turret gunner here. And B-24 is similar to the B-17s, but had longer ranges and could carry more bombs. B-24s were prone to fires because fuel was stored in the upper fuselage, which could be easily damaged. The maximum speed was a roaring 290 miles an hour, which doesn't seem like much today, but back then that was pretty fast. Cruising speed was 215 miles per hour. Range was 2,100 miles with a 5,000-pound bomb loader. Service ceiling was 28,000, but I guess they would get over that sometimes. And the typical mission flew over 1,000 miles round trip and took over 5 hours, not including all the rallying time. I know they spent a lot of time waiting for the formation to catch up and to get ready to go over the target. Another question I have for you, and this is a trick question. How many of you have flown in or maintained heavy bombers for actual combat? And this should be all the vets. So no, only the vets that have done this. I know you have. And what I want to do is just say that these are the members of the greatest generation. We thank them and we honor them for the brave and dedicated service that they've spent and that they've given us. So I give them a round of applause. Now, in addition to the diligent ground support, the B-24s were manned by 10 air crew members who flew the missions over enemy territory. As shown in the first photo on the handout, the typical crew consisted of 4 officers and 6 enlisted men. The officers were a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, and bombardier. The airmen consisted of a flight engineer, a radio operator who also served as a waist gunner, another waist gunner, a top turret gunner, a bottom turret gunner, front turret gunner, and a rear turret. Would that be correct? Turret gunner? A rear gunner. And from the original Patsy, my dad served as a radio operator, and then he also was a waist gunner. And his photo is there on that first page, and he's part of the crew. He's kneeling on the left-hand side, so that's Jack Bennett. The original Patsy Jet crew has one member still alive, and that's Paul Malone. And I spoke with Paul because I wanted to get some more background about their crew, about the B-24, and about the Patsy Jet. And he was very happy to talk about all that. He said he had surgery recently, so he couldn't make it to the reunion. He did say that he wished all of his fellow World War II vets an enjoyable reunion, and he hopes you were able to attend many more. As I talked to Paul Malone, I recalled that my dad had mentioned that their co-pilot had been taken from fighter school training to bombers. He said this co-pilot could fly the B-24 almost like a fighter plane, which really helped him escape several close calls from German fighters. Paul admitted that he was the one that my dad had talked about, and he enjoyed it so much that after completing the missions with the 451st, he went to P-51 fighters and completed another 50 missions in Europe. The second picture shows the Patsy Jet in flight. Notice the twin tail is painted a different color to identify the unit and squadron of each B-24. As shown in the first drawing, the tail had red on the top half, and the bottom half had a red circle to identify the squadron. The drawing next to that was a jacket hatch that shows a rear-wheel boxcar with wings and machine guns, which illustrated the B-24's nickname as the Flying Boxcar. The third drawing is a jacket patch used by the bomb group, which also shows the red tail. Now, I think you recall the red tails, right, for the 451st. Typically, these crews trained together in the U.S. for many months, and then flew the B-24s to the U.S. from the U.S. to their assigned European air bases. The Patsy Jet took the southern route. It went through Brazil, over the Atlantic, to Northwest Africa, and then on to their assigned combat base. The 451st operated out of several air bases in the Foggia area, which was near the heel of the boot of Italy. The bases included Foggia, Brindisi, Bari, and Castelluccio. In August, I was able to visit 2 of these bases, and the local people were very friendly. They really were pleased the Americans had come to Europe in 1943 or come to Italy. However, there's very little left to be seen of the old 70-year-old structures. Most of those are gone. In the first photo, you notice the crew is wearing a variety of clothing. For the typical mission, the crew dressed in the warmest clothing they had available. At high altitudes, it could get as cold as -30. The waist gunners had the added threat of wind chill because the large windows in the waist were open. Before a mission, they would put on heated flight suits and sheepskin-lined jackets, pants, boots, gloves, and helmets. At altitude, they had to wear oxygen masks due to the thin air. The radio operator needed to walk from his primary position behind the co-pilot through the bomb bay, and then plug in his heated suit and oxygen mask at the waist gunner position. Using the high-precision Norden bomb sight, the U.S. Army Air Force flew in daytime to improve their aim at the bomb target and to decrease collateral civilian damage. Because it was daylight bombing, their formation of planes frequently encountered large numbers of enemy fighters in repeated waves and severe anti-aircraft fire. This tactic resulted in better accuracy, but with heavy losses of aircraft and crews. The policy of the 15th Air Force was that each member of a crew had to complete 50 missions to rotate home. An ingenious plan was developed to give particularly difficult attacks credit as 2 missions. This way, the average crew would only have to fly over enemy territory about 35 to 38 times, bringing it back closer to other bomb group requirements of 35 missions. The original Patsy Jack Patsy Jack crew flew 36 combat missions over enemy territory with credit for 50, which they completed in July 1944. Some missions were so extraordinary due to a combination of extremely heavy resistance, unusually high loss of aircraft, great effectiveness of bombing, and avoidance of collateral damage that they qualified for a Distinguished Unit Citation, which was later changed to be called a Presidential Unit Citation. Very few DUCs were awarded. Over a 1.5-year period, the bomb group received the DUC for each of 3 missions. These were bombing missions to an aircraft factory at Regensburg, Germany on 29 February 1944, to oil refineries and marshalling yards at Ploiești, Romania on 5 April 1944, and to an aerodrome in Vienna, Austria on 23 August 1944. The original Patsy Jack crew participated in the first 2 missions. At the top of the second page of the handout is a photo of B-24's attack in Ploiești. You can see the puffs of flak in the sky, smoke from camouflage smoke clouds, and smoke from bomb damage fires. For a description of the overall attack on Ploiești, I will read from the Distinguished Unit Citation that was awarded to them. It reads as follows: for outstanding performance of duty in armed conflict with the enemy, on 4 April 1944, the bombardment group was notified to prepare a maximum number of aircraft for a mission against the Ploiești marshalling yards in Romania. The initial purpose of this mission was to disrupt the enemy's oil supply so vital to their operations on the Eastern Front and to their interception of Allied strategic bombing. Prior to this operation, the ground crews worked zealously with grim determination to have their aircraft at the peak of mechanical performance to ensure the success of the mission. On 5 April 1944, 40 B-24 type aircraft, heavily loaded with maximum tonnage, were airborne, and after assuming the lead of the wing formation, set course for the destination. Nearing the target, the formation was aggressively attacked by approximately 50 enemy aircraft firing rockets, cannon, and heavy machine guns. in a desperate effort to break up and destroy the bomber formation before the objective was reached. Displaying outstanding courage and determination, realizing the strategic importance of their task, the gallant crews battled their way through to the target. Despite the persistence of the fighter attacks, the intense barrage of enemy flak, and partial concealment of the target by a smoke screen, the group continued for a highly successful bombing run, inflicting grave damage to vital enemy installations, supplies, and equipment. Throughout the aerial battle, these gallant crews and the heroic defense of their aircraft destroyed a total of 27 enemy fighters and probably destroyed or damaged many more, thus holding our losses to a minimum for such a long and extremely hazardous mission. By the conspicuous gallantry, professional skill, and determination of the combat crews, together with the superior technical skill and devotion to duty of the ground personnel, the bombardment group has reflected the great credit upon itself and the armed forces of the United States of America, by command of General Twain. Wow, the DUC really makes you feel proud, doesn't it? Now I'd like to read a personal account from some of my father's writings. As you hear this, keep in mind that the 727th Squadron had 7 aircraft over target that day, and the entire lower flight consisted of 4 aircraft which were shot down. So only 3 of the 7 planes returned from the mission. He wrote as follows. The morning of April 5th, 1944, I went to the briefing, and when the map for combat came up, there was a loud roar. It was the first high-level raid on Pulaski oil fields. It was very early morning when we started taxiing for takeoff. We were down at the end of the runway when the first of 2 B-24s ran together on takeoff. They immediately started to burn and bombs blew up. 18 out of 20 died. 2 were helped out and survived. James White is buried in the Hillside Cemetery in Purcell. We stood by on the runway until it was clear enough to take off, and then we took off and joined the remainder of the group. We had German fighter planes fight us all the way to the approach point for Pulaski. They came at us out of the sun and got our low flight of 4 planes, 40 people. We were flying a standby plane named Sodbuster since our plane was out being repaired. Apparently, the previous crew had not cleaned my 50 caliber. It would get a few shots, and then it would freeze. I only realized our low flight was gone when some parachutes came by. We got into flak with some hard hits, but we made it back to Brindisi. One lieutenant wanted a debriefing, but for me, I went to bed. We flew 50 missions from Italy. I did 1 extra mission for Colonel Eaton to Rimini. We finished our missions during July 1944, and our replacement crew took over. Apparently, they didn't last long. They went down in our plane on August 2nd, 1944. The crew was honored by the French later. Well, double wow. He makes that sound pretty easy and matter of fact. For the last flight, the replacement crew was flying Patsy Jack in southern France when they were shot down. Also, the crew in the local villages the French in the local villages did honor the U.S. crewmen with memorials that are shown in the 2 photos on the bottom of the back page. The photo of the field shows the memorial where the Patsy Jack was reported to have crashed. 9 of the crew successfully parachuted, while 1 died when his parachute failed to open. The 9 were hidden by the French resistance and smuggled out of the country. The other photo with the church shows a memorial which lists the crew by name, along with a special plaque for the fallen crew member. The 4th 51st Bomb Group continued flying combat missions in B-24s until May of the next year, when the Allies achieved victory and the war ended in Europe. This concludes my presentation. I encourage you to talk with the World War II vets about their experience and to listen to their stories. Thank you for being here.